revealed. I chose to give everything to my grandson amidst my son-in-law's shocking demands. Martha's heart sank as she listened to Tom's ultimatum, his voice a clanging bell in her ears. Sell the family farm, he insisted. It's what Emma would want, he said, his words laden with feigned affection. But Martha knew the truth. Tom's ambition knew no boundaries, and he believed he had the right to dispose of everything that meant anything to her, all in the name of his faltering startup. She clutched a well-worn photo of her late husband, their hands intertwined around a sun-drenched field, and felt the weight of generations pressing upon her. This land wasn't just soil, it was blood, sweat, and laughter. But behind the force of her indignation was a darker fear, a gnawing worry for her grandson, Luke. At 12, he was quiet and studious, lost beneath shadows too big to capture his light. Martha caught herself hesitating, questioning if family loyalty necessitated compliance with Tom's demands. Would selling the farm ease their struggles, or would it snatch away Luke's chance at a future? It sat heavy on her chest, the suffocating reality of her dilemma. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky orange, Martha found solace in her evening routine. Rows of corn swayed gently in the wind, but her mind was turbulent. She dusted off her old teaching materials and dug deep into ancient tomes, passionate science experiments marketed for the youth. Secrets of biology and physics began folding themselves into the evenings she spent with Luke, hatching ideas of rockets and ecosystems over boxes of dusty books. Was she stealing her own joy, trading her evening peace for something so risky? Fear raced through her veins, that she'd renew the spark for dreams best left unlit. Yet, each time Luke's eyes lit up with wonder, determination revived her own spirit. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But the peace was fleeting, shattered like glass when Tom marched into the town hall, forcing everyone to hear his divisive issue, the farm. He stood before their neighbors, demand a rift to secure his own gains. It's not just a piece of dirt, it's profit, he sneered, the contempt dripping from his words, and she could see he was prepared to unleash the full weight of his charisma on her. Martha could sense the tension thicken, feel it coil around her as she held her breath. Every face in the crowd now regarded her as if they awaited her surrender. Martha's heart thudded against her ribs, half desiring to fade into the shadows. Yet, she yearned to speak, to shout out truths buried deep within her. Instead, the words choked her. Would they still respect her if she faltered? Would they understand when she countered the corporate greed with tales of history? The moment collided with urgency, the stakes now greater than she had ever anticipated. With her entire legacy and Luke's future tangled in this chaotic web, she had to make a stand, a desperate act that could shatter or solidify everything she loved. She locked eyes with Tom, feeling the gravity of generations waiting for her answer. Each breath drew her closer to the precipice of her decision. Her voice, a faint whisper against the tempest of betrayal and love. Would the community rally behind her, or would this be the end of everything? Martha stood frozen in the town hall, the heavy weight of her history binding her feet to the ground. She glanced at the gathered crowd. Their expectant faces reflected both support and skepticism. Was the community still her ally, or had Tom's ambition clouded their judgment? The air thickened around her, each passing second stretching her resolve to its limits. Then, a spark ignited within her. She remembered the stories her husband used to tell about the land, about the sacrifices, the love, and the interwoven lives that emerged from the soil. The vision wasn't just a physical space. It was a legacy crafted through creased hands and nurturing hearts. With a quick inhale, Martha opened her mouth, not caring if her voice quivered. This land is not just dirt. It's our home, woven with memories and the dreams of those who came before us. The murmurs in the room hushed to a silence that felt palpable. She saw recognition forming in some faces, glimmers of understanding breaking through the cloud of doubt. Emboldened, she continued, her words growing stronger. If we sell out to greed, what message will we send to our children? Luke deserves a chance to grow here, to learn the value of hard work, of respect for the land that nurtures us. As she spoke, Martha's thoughts raced. Was she becoming the voice for the dreams she once suppressed? Lately, she'd felt like an echo of the vibrant woman her family used to know, a woman willing to fight for what was right. Her self-doubt was beginning to morph into a fierce resolve. She could reclaim her identity and defend her family's heritage. Tom shifted at the front, his brow furrowing, and she could see rage bubbling beneath his surface. "This is ridiculous, Martha," he retorted, though his voice held a tremor. "The farm is a burden that's pulling us under. Are you really willing to keep us shackled to mud and memories rather than thinking of what could be? Luke would be better off with support that can elevate him." Martha felt the tension spill from the crowd as whispers danced like wildfire. Fear flared within her, but she steeled herself against it. It's not just about money. It's about values, about nurturing dreams and aspirations that run deeper than financial gain. What good is success if it costs us our humanity? Her voice resounded through the hall, and with each word she could see momentum shifting. Luke's face emerged in her mind, a vision of the curious boy he once was, that important spark reigniting each time they explored science together. Her heart began to race not only with anxiety, but also with purpose. This was about more than her feud with Tom. It was about shaping a future for her grandson, a legacy that would remain steadfast against the currents of time. The crowd seemed to lean in closer, their collective energy urging her on. Could she unite them against Tom's self-serving agenda? She had to believe in herself as the custodian of memories, culture, and futures intertwined with the land. Tom's expression hardened. "You can't win this battle, Martha. You're fighting against progress." Yet, she felt buoyed by a storm of determination. "And I'm ready to confront that." Her resolve crystallized in her heart, propelling her forward. The tension was palpable. She was standing on the threshold of a pivotal moment, a decisive battle for what truly mattered. Now, with eyes locked on Tom and a crowd behind her, Martha understood the choice she faced. She could stand her ground or let the land go. The stakes escalated with each heartbeat, and she sensed change hanging in the balance. As the room steadied itself, she felt the walls of her old identity crumbling. A new Martha was rising, one ready to take action. The time has come to face the truth. What larger truths awaited her on this unfolding path? Would she manage to pull together a coalition to save not just the land, but the very soul of their future? Each moment pulsed with possibility, and uncertainty gnawed at her. But one thing was certain. The fight had only just begun. Martha's words hung in the air like a thick fog, coiling around the hearts of her listeners. The challenge before her was daunting, yet clarity shimmered in her mind, like the sunrise breaking over the horizon. She felt the shifting tides of her life, the resistance she had faced all these years, gradually transforming into something she could harness. Driven by a surge of enthusiasm, she embraced the moment. The crowd was no longer a faceless entity. It had morphed into a tapestry woven with shared values and common goals. She could feel the connection burning bright, a bridge between her unwavering commitment to their shared soil and their own buried hopes. But could that emboldened connection spur collective action? Would they feel compelled to stand with her against Tom? With each passing second, the stakes rose higher. Martha pondered her next move carefully. She couldn't simply persuade them with passionate rhetoric. She needed to create a shared vision that resonated with all, even those swayed by Tom's siren call. She glanced around the room, noting the diverse expressions overshadowed by apprehension, yet yearning for something solid to hold on to. "Let us not forget," she began, trying to capture the crowd's attention again, "that our identity is intertwined with the land we've cherished for generations. This isn't just a matter of defending a plot of earth. It's a matter of defending who we are." Her words were firm, intentional, as if the very ground beneath her was affirming her resolve. Tom's face reddened. His frustration simmered beneath the surface, and she sensed it might boil over. "You're out of touch," he barked, but the crowd remained respectfully silent, their ears attuned to Martha's growing conviction. "These aren't the times for nostalgia." "But what are we without history?" she countered swiftly. "Nostalgia grounds us. It teaches us resilience. Selling the farm may seem like an easy fix, but it's a mask for deeper issues that we must address together." Suddenly, she remembered the tall oak tree that graced the property, its roots reaching deep underground, supporting not just itself, but the entire ecosystem thriving around it. If she could only inspire the community to see themselves like that tree, anchored in their heritage, while reaching out together to create a brighter future. Flashes of personal memories ignited within her, her husband's laughter echoing in the summer evening breeze, the warmth of her hands in the dirt planting seeds beside her son. She took a step closer, her voice softer, but no less passionate. "If we allow ourselves to be consumed by fear and doubt, we doom our future. Luke deserves to grow up knowing the flavor of fresh produce he helps cultivate. He deserves the freedom to explore the skies and the soil." Each word nurtured the collective hope simmering beneath the doubt. She could feel it transforming, sparking an interest here, a nod of agreement there. As her heart raced, she strategized a way to engage those who might still falter, to invite them into the narrative, so they wouldn't view her as a foe, but as a partner in this shared journey. Emerging from her thoughts, she asked, "What if we came together to enhance what we have? Expand the farm into a community-supported initiative. We can teach each other. Workshops on sustainable practices, a marketplace that celebrates local goods. Imagine that." She could see glimmers of intrigue in eyes that previously seemed glazed over. Conversations flickered alive. The energy surged as people murmured agreements. But just as hope bloomed in the room, Tom interjected, vigor in his stance. "And how do you plan to fund this fanciful dream? It's a pipe dream with no viability." With confidence brewing in her veins, Martha drew a deep breath, prepared to confront everything Tom represented. "Viability begins with belief, Tom. Let me show you that together we can forge something powerful, something that transcends our current struggles." As the crowd settled into contemplation, she sensed that every passing moment was a chance to solidify her vision or leave it to falter. Self-doubt faded into the background, her resolve intensified. But in that charged atmosphere, a new question arose. Was she truly ready to lead, to bear the weight of a community's hopes? With the horizon for her future shifting rapidly, the answer seemed daunting, yet tantalizingly close. Could she risk everything again for a future that might not just save the land, but the essence of who they all were? As she prepared to respond to Tom, Martha felt an unexpected excitement mixed with dread. She had ignited something within herself and the crowd. It was time to confront the challenges ahead, head on. What hidden strengths would she discover in this unexpected role? The next word she spoke could either be the catalyst for change or plunge them all deeper into conflict. The true fight loomed just ahead. Martha stood at the precipice of a moment that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Tom's skepticism hovered like a storm cloud, yet she refused to allow it to dampen the bright spark she had ignited. Her mind raced, seeking a way to counter his challenge, to validate her vision not only in the hearts of those gathered, but in her own spirit. "What if we approached it differently?" she proposed, her voice steady. "Instead of seeing limitations, let's view each obstacle as a stepping stone. What if we started small, with one workshop, something accessible to everyone, something tangible that would showcase what we can achieve together. A smattering of applause rippled through the room. Encouraged, she pressed on. We could create a program for children, teaching them about the earth, growing their own produce. It could be a weekly event, drawing in families and creating bonds. And we can do it without massive funding. All we need is the determination to start. Tom shook his head, dismissing her ideas with a wave of his hand. You think a few workshops will change anything? People are struggling every day, Martha. They want solutions now, not some arts and crafts project. His voice rang with certainty, yet each sentence felt like a desperate attempt to protect a yearning heart beneath his harsh exterior. Martha's chest tightened. How could she challenge that kind of cynicism without losing the fire that now fueled her? Each dismissive word was a reminder of how far Tom had drifted from the fabric of their community. Yet she couldn't let anger consume her. Instead, she needed to reveal the truth hidden within her heart. Tom, she began, tone-tempered, yet resolute. What if we redefine success? What if we aim for a thriving community, not just financially, but in spirit and resilience? When I think of success, I think of Luke running through the fields, laughing as he learns from the earth. That image, that joy, is worth fighting for. She could see mounting curiosity breaching the surface of doubt in her audience. She had always been known for her practicality, but now she found herself leaning into something deeper, a call to purpose that surged within her. She wondered how many others were ready to feel that spark as well. Suddenly, a thought struck her. She recalled the community meetings she had attended in her early days here, the stories laughing people had shared about the land, stories that had woven her into the fabric of this place. Perhaps she could invite them to share their own stories now, to remind them why they cared in the first place. What if we host another gathering, Martha proposed, her voice rising now, where everyone can tell their own stories about what this land means to them. We can connect over that. From those stories, we can draft a plan that honors our past while moving us forward. Let's remind ourselves of the roots we share. Tom looked momentarily taken aback. She had turned the focus from her vision to a collective recollection of identity. It was a strategic pivot, inviting participation rather than forcing a confrontation. The people around her seemed to lean in, eyebrows raising, nods appearing. It was the spark of community she had begun to sense again. Yet just when she felt momentum stirring, she watched Tom scoff again. And how exactly will that help? We need clear-cut actions, not stories. His brow furrowed, the shade of anger deepening, but perhaps now, under the weight of Martha's undaunted conviction, there were shadows of uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Martha understood then that the battle was not purely against Tom, but against the defeat that had seeped into their hearts over years of decline. She knew, without a doubt, that her greatest weapon was her unwavering commitment to not just what the land stood for, but what it could ultimately offer them all. I won't pretend it's easy, she responded, her voice thick with emotion. But I believe this land deserves our fight. I believe we can turn it into something far greater than we imagined. And if we genuinely want change, we have to start here, with each of us. The crowd buzzed with tentative excitement, faces shifting from skepticism to thoughtful consideration. Martha could feel a shift, a collective heartbeat beginning to synchronize with her own belief. But amid the burgeoning hope lay an ominous question for her, the challenge of ownership that came with leadership. Were her ideas enough to anchor them through this storm? Did she have what it took to nurture this budding alliance? Or would she falter under the weight of Tom's incessant criticisms? As she scanned the crowd, a familiar feeling gripped her, wonderment mixed with dread. Within that circle of friends turned adversaries, who would rise to lead alongside her? And would she have the courage to accept the consequences of this journey, whatever they might be? Before she could wrestle with those concerns, a voice cut through the crowd once more. "Martha, what do you really want? This isn't just about farming anymore, is it?" The words hung heavy, demanding clarity and forcing Martha to confront the truth she had guarded closely. The time had come to face not only Tom's challenges, but her own desires. What would define her legacy amid these tumultuous shifts, and where would that lead her next? Martha inhaled sharply, the weight of the question settling on her like a heavy cloak. What did she truly want? The realization struck her that this endeavor was no longer solely about crops and workshops, but about reclaiming the essence of community that had slowly withered away. As the murmurs of the crowd faded into silence, she embraced the moment, aware that clarity was both a beacon and a burden. She felt Tom's eyes drilling into her, a challenge laced with doubt. She needed to craft an answer that was both raw and profound, one that could bridge the gap between her yearning and the skepticism still festering in the room. "It's about legacy," she said slowly, filtering through the many possibilities. "For me, it's not just about physical produce, it's about cultivating hope, hope for our children, our future. When I think of Luke, I think of the world I want him to inherit, one filled with laughter, knowledge, and connection to this land." The air shifted, crackling with her raw honesty. She could see the faces around her, some still skeptical, but a few were beginning to illuminate with recognition. It was those flickers of understanding that fueled her next words. "I want to create a space where stories thrive, where our past informs our present and builds a bright future. I want to rip away the apathy that has taken root in so many of us." Tom's expression remained hardened, but the slight tightening of his brows showed he wasn't entirely immune to her fervor. It wasn't enough. She needed to go deeper. "I refuse to settle for stagnation. I want us to remember why we chose to live here, why we cared in the first place. I want us to transform our shared struggles into a narrative that celebrates resilience." The energy in the room shifted distinctly. For the first time, voices murmured their agreement. She saw heads nodding, eyes gleaming with what might be. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. She was stepping into the role of a leader, and the stakes felt impossibly high. Could she bear the weight of those expectations? "What if we fail?" The voice came from an old neighbor, one she had grown up alongside. "What if we try and nothing changes?" Martha's heart raced, unsure if she could provide the reassurance he needed. "But what if we don't try? What if we let this place slip through our fingers without fighting for it?" It was a gamble, and in that moment she realized she'd been playing at the edges of doubt for far too long. "I stand here, willing to work side by side with all of you. I may not have all the answers, but I will not let fear dictate our path." A beat of silence hung between them as the truth of her words settled. She looked at Tom, searching for any hint of understanding, a shift in his faltering resolve. "I need your support, Tom, not your criticism. Help me create the change you claim to seek." A dark cloud of frustration still clung to him, but something had softened in his posture. He was reconsidering, reevaluating. Maybe she wasn't such a fool after all. The crowd was watching, and those initial smatters of applause were growing into waves of encouragement. Martha's pulse quickened with the realization that she no longer needed to prove her worth solely against Tom's disbelief. Instead, she could channel that energy toward envisioning a plan that resonated beyond individual pride. The gathering of those yielded by passion became palpable, something she could work with. People were yearning for a purpose. She sensed it kicking through the surface like sprouting seeds. Yet beneath the rising tide of optimism, conflicting currents swirled relentlessly. Was she truly equipped to lead them through this labyrinth of doubts and fears? What if the very connections she so ardently wished to nurture came with unforeseen burdens? As questions loomed, she breathed deeply, willing herself to step forward. "I'm ready to do this if you are." The room simmered, a mix of bravado and uncertainty, and she could feel the shifting sands beneath her feet as the moment hung precariously. Suddenly, doubt spiraled back. What if the next decision she made would lead her down a path she couldn't return from? Little did she know that as her path crystallized into view, darkness lurked just beyond the horizon, eyeing her next move with eager anticipation. The crowd's murmurs faded into the backdrop of her heart, pounding in her ears, as Martha felt the energy shift around her. Adrenaline surged, and her determination tangled with uncertainty, a cocktail of fear and resolve that rattled her very foundations. What had she set into motion? The words she delivered now hung in the air like heavy mist, thick with expectation. She could feel the weight of every pair of eyes upon her, some still skeptical, others ignited with newfound curiosity. This was no longer simply about her ambitions. It was a dance between hope and vulnerability, a delicate balance she would need to maintain. Stepping back instinctively, Martha scanned the room, a rush of emotion igniting her. How had she come to this crucible? A simple desire to foster a sense of connectivity had ballooned into a collective flame. Yet, as ever, the darkness was whispering doubts within the recesses of her mind. Questions came as quick and sharp as flashes of lightning. Did she possess the skills to nurture these budding ideas into reality? Did she deserve to lead, especially when her own life felt like a series of missteps? Tom's expression, as she glanced back at him, held the promise of both challenge and support. It wasn't assurance, far from it, but beneath his skepticism lay an opening. This was her moment to lean into vulnerability, to confront the doubts that defined her. Gritting her teeth, she forced her focus onto the possibilities that stretched before her. The challenges of her past whispered in the corners of her consciousness, the miscalculations in earlier ventures, moments of isolation that gnawed greedily at her confidence. Yet every moment of failure had sharpened her. They were the chisel and hammer shaping her resolve. As she weighed her past against the fervor of the crowd, the enormity of her aspirations crashed over her like waves. Maybe she hadn't been quite ready when she initially stepped up, but that initial spark to cultivate hope ran deeper than mere ambition. It was a manifestation of her commitment to transform doubt into action. "Let's talk about what this looks like," she said, rediscovering her footing. "We define our legacy by the way we engage with our land and each other. We create gardens that represent more than aesthetics. They're metaphors of growth and resilience, an imprint of connection and strength." A ripple of agreement surged through the room, fueling her determination. She recognized, however, the gravity of her next words needed precision. "Let's take small steps, plant seeds of change. We can host community gatherings, workshops to share skills, and even storytelling sessions to share our experiences. Every single one of you has value to contribute." The idea of transformation began to feel tangible, its energy palpable. Martha noticed individuals leaning forward, engaged, their postures signaling a willingness to participate. What if those initial hesitations melted into collaboration? Could the seeds she was starting to plant blossom into the very hope she longed for her son and the entire community? Yet doubt remained, a shadow lurking just outside her clarity. Could she truly navigate every decision without faltering? Martha pushed the thought aside. Growth never came without discomfort. Embracing uncertainty would be part of her journey. As the evening progressed, she laid the groundwork for her vision, energy building within the room. Plans were drafted, ideas were shared, yet she remained restless. The conversation flowed, but could she trust she'd uncovered the depths of their commitment to this vision? "Tomorrow, we will meet again. Bring your ideas, your hesitations, everything. We are not starting a race. We are nurturing a garden." Martha's voice gained strength, clarity punctuating her words. She needed not just their participation, but something deeper, a heartfelt investment. And then, a strident voice broke through the hum. "But what if it fails, Martha? What if in trying to bring us together, you expose the fractures instead?" Her breath hitched, the tension in the room turned palpable again. The question echoed her deepest fears. Was she willing to face the repercussions of her ambition? As the rippling energy stilled, Martha felt the weight of that question, piercing yet invigorating. She understood that to forge something meaningful would require sincerity, vulnerability, and a leap into the unknown, but to turn back was not an option. In that moment of silence, her emotions sparked with clarity. If we risk nothing, we lose everything. I choose this path. Together, we will confront our fears, create our future. Unbeknownst to her, shadows loomed once more. Unfolding mysteries awaited. As the night deepened, the weight of her decisions thickened. Martha could sense that her willingness to lead would soon be tested in ways she hadn't yet anticipated, each challenge stirring new depths of resilience within her soul. Just as the path began to form, an unsettling presence loomed, signaling that the next chapter of her journey wouldn't be easy. Would she be able to confront the trials ahead, or would the emerging cracks in their unity splinter her vision apart? Martha awoke the next day with the weight of the night pressing heavily on her chest. Each breath felt laden with the unresolved tension from the previous evening, as if the very air charged with unspoken words and unmade decisions. The sun filtered through her window, warm yet distant, a reminder that daybreak brought fresh possibilities and fierce challenges alike. As she prepared for the meeting, doubts niggled at her, clawing at the edges of her resolve. What if today's gathering only drew out the cracks instead of fortifying her vision? What if she was unworthy of leading this effort? The accusations of inadequacy echoed in her mind, carrying remnants of past failures that she had worked so hard to overcome. But as she applied her mascara, using the reflection of the mirror to steady herself, a flicker of determination ignited within. "You have to own this, Martha," she whispered, almost pleading with her own image. She fastened her scarf, a simple but intentional act, reminiscent of an armor she needed to wear today. Arriving at the meeting spot, she took note of the anxious tension mingling with lingering optimism. She found herself scanning the room, searching for familiar faces that might lend her strength. Her heart skipped when she spotted Tom, animatedly discussing something with a couple of others. He caught her eye and offered a nod, and for the briefest moment, she felt bolstered by the warmth of that small gesture. Once the crowd settled, she began again. "Thank you all for returning. Yesterday was just the beginning, a chance to envision what we can achieve together. But today, I invite you to share your hesitations first, to confront the fears that surface in this room." Reluctance hung heavily in the air, and Martha's palms became slick with unseen sweat. Silence cloaked them like a fog. Just when she began to wonder if anyone would unpack their reservations, a woman named Sylvia spoke up. "It sounds beautiful, what you proposed, but what if we end up needing more than we can offer? What if our efforts aren't enough?" Martha breathed in deeply, crafting her response carefully. "It's true. We might not have all the answers now, but together, our individual strengths can create a mosaic of resilience. Every challenge we acknowledge provides us an opportunity to grow." Yet, the room remained hesitant, riddled with uncertainty. Perhaps Sylvia's words had opened a floodgate. One by one, doubts began to spill. "What if we confuse harmony with silence?" chimed in another voice. "And our efforts only make things worse." As the concerns accumulated, Martha's stomach tightened, but in the whirlwind of trepidation, she also spotted something miraculous. The group was beginning to engage deeply. Their fears did not shatter her vision. Rather, they shaped it into something more robust. Stepping forward, she reminded them, "These fears are channels for growth, not barriers. They need to be voiced. Let's write them down, each hesitation, so we can address them as a team. What we reveal here can only strengthen our foundation." Hands reached for paper and pens, and Martha felt energy surging, a current shifting through the room. Individuals whispered amongst each other, sharing hesitations. The vulnerabilities they named out loud carved out space for honesty and understanding. Ideas floated, threads woven together by reciprocity. Yet beneath this wave of engagement, Martha felt something thrumming, an underpinning tension that she could not yet grasp. Why did one of her more assertive members, a man named Carl, remain uncharacteristically silent? Before she could dwell on it too long, Martha noted an unexpected shift, a palpable hesitation among the group, their eyes drifting uneasily toward the door. An outsider had slipped in unnoticed. Her heart sank when she recognized the figure, Richard, her son-in-law. As he stepped further into the room, the air thickened with trepidation. Questions morphed into a tangible heaviness, flooding her senses. What was he doing here? What were his intentions? But at that moment, she was determined. Today had morphed into something unexpected, and here he stood, a figure from her past she had sought to distance herself from. The juxtaposition of old fears and new hopes intensified the tension. It was no longer just about her community or the plans they hoped to foster. It had woven itself into a very personal dilemma. "Richard," she called out, summoning her courage, "what brings you here today?" His response would shape everything. Would he tear down what she had begun to build? Or could he be the unsought ally she never anticipated? The room awaited his answer, and so did Martha, bracing herself for whatever was to come. Richard paused at the threshold, his presence eclipsing the sense of camaraderie Martha had attempted to cultivate. She watched him weigh the room, scanning the faces that had begun to coalesce around shared vulnerabilities. The silence felt charged, vibrating with suppressed emotions and unvoiced judgments. "Why are you here, Richard?" The question slipped out with more urgency than she had intended. He cleared his throat, visibly shifting into a more authoritative role as he took a few measured steps forward. "I came to clarify a thing or two," he said, his voice steady, yet laced with an underlying tension. "There are developments that you might not be aware of, and I think it's crucial we discuss them." Martha noted the unease ripple through the group. Richard had a way of commanding attention, of pulling focus away from the collective energies in the room to center it on himself. A faint flush of irritation rumbled beneath her skin. "Can it wait? We were just beginning to unpack some important ideas here," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. Richard folded his arms, an ancient habit that told her he was preparing to present a case. "I don't think it can. It involves your daughter and your grandson." The mention of her family turned her determination into a dagger. "My focus," she said slowly, deliberately, "is on this group and what we are building together. Please, respectfully, if you have something to say, share it. But I won't disrupt this conversation." Richard's expression faltered, revealing not just frustration, but a flicker of something that could almost be concern. "Martha, I came because they're in trouble. You need to know what's going on." "I'm aware of my family's challenges, Richard," she interrupted, her heart racing, the remnants of past conflicts flashing within her mind. "I can handle this. Just step back for now." He sighed, a resigned exhalation that held both acknowledgement and defiance. "It's your choice, but know that I am not here to drag you away from your dreams. I'm simply trying to protect what truly matters." Martha felt the weight of every word. The context of his actions now painted itself in a broader picture. This wasn't merely interjection. It was a plea wrapped in his usual assertiveness. The group watched, and she could sense their escalating curiosity merging with their fears. Taking a deep breath, she pivoted her focus back to the room. "Let's take a brief pause." She glanced at Richard, gauging his next move. Would it suffice to hear Richard's concerns first? Maybe it impacts our plans more than we realize. Reluctance danced in the eyes of her companions, but a few nodded, allowing her to reclaim the narrative. "Just be honest, Richard. What's this about?" As she braced for the impact of his revelations, a new tension brewed beneath her composure. How to balance these personal entanglements and her dedication to this shared vision? Richard took a step forward, eyes locked onto her. "We may lose custody of your grandson if you don't reconsider your priorities. They believe someone's influencing you against what's best for him." Martha inhaled sharply, her composure cracking like glass. The room blurred momentarily, her thoughts spiraling as the implications sunk in, protecting her grandson, confronting Richard's accusations and her family's strife. "Don't you dare use him as leverage," she said fiercely. Unbeknownst to her, shouts of determination and vulnerability were still bubbling beneath the surface of the group, waiting to manifest. The air grew heavy with potential, her spirit igniting amid the swirling conflict. Could she reconcile her roles as both a leader and a mother? "Everyone, let's regain our focus," she said, her voice steadying under the weight of urgency. "Our fears and aspirations still matter, but I must ask, what are we willing to sacrifice for the things and people we care about?" A silence enveloped them again, but this time it felt like a choice, a prelude to something significant. What would she reveal about herself and her priorities? The voices of her community hummed in her ears, growing louder against Richard's dissonance, awaiting the next move. Martha was on the brink. The crossroads of her life unfurled before her, shrouded in uncertainty. Would she confront Richard to protect her vision, or would family demands shift the very ground she stood upon? As the tension thickened, uncertainty loomed large. What lay ahead in the tangled threads of her choices? A new chapter difficult to navigate awaited. Martha's heart pounded heavy in her chest as Richard's words clanged like a bell of responsibility. The atmosphere in the room shifted from uncomfortable to downright suffocating, the weight of her decision hanging before her like a rogue storm cloud. She forced herself to focus on the faces around her, each etched with concern, curiosity, and a hint of fear. As Richard continued, "They believe your involvement here signifies a neglect of duty. Your daughter's worried, and they're questioning your influence over your grandson's well-being." It ignited a flash of resistance within her. Rationally, she knew Richard's intentions might be rooted in care and concern, yet all she could feel was the encroaching sense of failure. Was she really so easily dismissed as a maternal figure because she expanded her horizons beyond her family? "Enough," she said, though it sounded more like a plea than an assertion. "You're painting a picture that's unrecognizable to me. I'm making strides here. This is where I belong." Richard stepped closer, committing to bridging an invisible gap. But at what cost, Martha? You can't build a dream on the foundation of fractured relationships. Your grandson deserves a stable environment, and you need to prioritize his needs. As he spoke, she felt something shift inside her. She was wrestling with her own burgeoning passions, but could they truly overshadow the needs of her blood? This dilemma wasn't just about her aspirations. It was an identity crisis that screamed to be acknowledged. Taking a deep breath, she fought against the disorientation threatening to tear through her composure. Her voice steadied as she asked, "What do you suggest I do? Walk away from this?" "If that's what it takes," Richard replied with such certainty it rattled her core. "Maybe it's time to refocus on what matters most." Martha closed her eyes for a moment, imagining her grandson, innocent and trusting, his little face filled with joy and curiosity. The image was vivid as it blended with memories of Richard's ongoing overbearance and her daughter's struggles. "No," she whispered, a fierce resolve creeping back. "I won't accept that. Taking steps towards my growth does not equate to abandoning my family." The fire ignited in her gut, a pulse of determination that threatened to override her fear. As she opened her eyes, she felt the room's energy shift, intrigued by her newfound assertion. There was something more powerful than her initial instincts, the realization that her journey could inspire rather than detract from her familial obligations. Calmer now, she turned to the group, I'm not asking you all to choose sides or to ignore my family's challenges, but I also won't be the person who sacrifices her needs completely for fear of judgment or judgment from Richard's worries. A glimmer of understanding crossed the faces around her. Some nodded, others reflected. The collective concern transformed into a dialogue, one interspersed with their own revelations of personal conflicts. It was liberating, a movement towards shared vulnerability. "Let's break this down together," she suggested, her voice gaining momentum. "Sharing our stories can heal wounds we might not even recognize are forming. In doing so, we fortify each other." Martha felt the exchange shift her focus, channeling energies into confronting the unknown rather than retreating. Each voice that rose in agreement further solidified a bridge, one that connected her emerging self and her duties as a mother and grandmother. As the group began to share stories and strategies, Martha felt the weight of her choices still pull at her, but with a different tone. It was no longer debilitating. It became the starting point for something larger than herself. With every word, another piece of her uncertainty fell away, revealing confidence she hadn't recognized as hers. However, certainty gave way to lingering anxiety, her resolve to act on her passion coupled with the gnawing fear of what would happen if she failed her family again. But the question persisted. How could she hold these two spheres of her life together without allowing one to devour the other? As she searched for an answer, the faint pulse of doubt crept back in, foretelling an internal battle that was far from over. A familiar voice spoke up amidst the crowd, offering poignant thoughts that resonated with Martha. With it came a rush of realization that she'd have to confront Richard joyfully yet forcefully. She would carve her own path for herself and her family alike. The next chapter awaited, unfurling its invisible threads, whispering, "What if Richard isn't the only one with secrets that intertwine with Martha's journey?" Martha stood at a pivotal moment, her heart racing as the convergence of her aspirations and the responsibilities towards her family loomed before her. The discussions in the room had ignited a community spirit, and her resolve was hardening like steel. She could see potential flicker in the eyes of her neighbors. They were all willing to embrace a common cause. Yet, Richard's presence was a heavy reminder of the sensitive balance she faced. "Let's address this head-on," Martha said, her determination coiling into a single wave of confidence. "I want to be a grandmother who inspires, but I also refuse to let my family or dreams remain confined in the shadows of fear." Her voice rang with conviction as her words shifted the room's energy. She realized that behind Richard's concerns lay a possibility, a chance to unite her aspirations with her role as a mother. She turned to Richard, her voice even but assertive. "Your fears are valid, but they won't dictate the course I choose. I want what's best for Luke, and part of that is showing him how to stand up for what really matters in life. Selling away our history won't strengthen our family, it will fracture it." Richard opened his mouth as though to protest, but Martha pressed on, feelings bubbling to the surface. "I understood your desire to protect us, but I cannot compromise the integrity of our community for that protection. I want Luke to see me as someone who fights, not out of defiance, but in love." The murmurs of admiration swept through the crowd, emboldening her spirit further. For too long, she had concealed her ambitions under the guise of familial duty, but now each breath carried the unmistakable essence of transformation. She recognized that she was no longer just Martha, the mother or the daughter, she was also Martha, the leader. Seeing her neighbors rally around their shared purpose filled her with a newfound energy. They were beginning to realize that this was more than about saving the farm. It was about rekindling a sense of belonging that stretched far beyond property lines. She gestured to the walls adorned with their past. "This land is a testament to our struggles and victories. It is required of us to preserve it, not merely as a patch of earth, but as a sanctuary where generations can thrive. We'll cultivate it with hope, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who follows." Richard's expression softened. Something shifted in his demeanor. Perhaps he realized the weight of her words. The decisions made here would impact not just Luke, but a network of interconnected lives. Just as Martha began to believe in the spark igniting in her community, she sensed Richard wrestling with his own doubts. "Fine," he said reluctantly, but there was a glimmer of compromise in his eyes. "If you believe you can lead this community without neglecting our family, then let's collaborate, instead of delve further into conflict." The crowd erupted into supportive murmurs, and a collective sigh of relief washed over Martha. Her heart soared, resonating with conviction, as Richard's grudging acknowledgement signaled a turning tide. As discussions began to unfold, she felt every word spoken by her neighbors. Each story shared became a thread woven into the very fabric of the community. They explored practical concepts for workshops, sustainable practices, and the livelihoods they could develop together. Martha could feel herself blossoming within this realm, her purpose gaining clarity amid the evolving dialogue. Where fear once dominated, it was being replaced with belief, a fierce commitment to perform every task with integrity. Days turned into weeks, and as the initiative took root, Martha watched the community vibrant with enthusiasm, united under a common vision. Luke became an active participant too, learning right alongside them. She saw his confidence grow each time he contributed ideas. It lit a fire in her heart. She had protected his future not through avoidance, but with action. Recognition came too. Local news featured their initiative as an inspiring story of resilience. Martha's passion was crystallizing into tangible achievements. She held her head high as she stood alongside her neighbors, fulfilling both her dreams and responsibilities. She now felt complete, carving her legacy on her own terms. In that defining moment, she realized that it was possible to simultaneously fulfill her role as an advocate for her family and a champion of her community. Martha's heart surged as pride swelled within. She had grown through adversity, nurtured relationships, and united strength from conflict. As she turned to look at Richard, standing proudly beside her at the community gathering, she knew the past didn't have to dictate their future. She smiled, knowing she'd successfully cultivated not just a farm, but the spirit of a family restored, with newfound promise ahead. Martha had achieved her ultimate transformation, not merely as a grandmother, a mother, or a neighbor, but as a confident leader, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Now, more than ever, she believed in the power of stories, connection, and resilience as anchors for a future that intertwined love, hope, and respect for their roots. You need to subscribe now to continue witnessing powerful transformations in every story. This is the moment to show your support for these meaningful journeys. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure your voice is heard in this community. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible journey of growth. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this inspiring conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to dive deeper into the power of personal change.